The Rock and Roll and Coffee Show is brought to you by Writers and Rockers Coffee Company, keeping the music and memories alive with some damn good coffee. Be sure to pick up your Rock and Roll and Coffee Show coffee only at writersandrockerscoffee.com. And also brought to you by Retroactive, located at Broadway at the Beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, keeping you retro with everything from 70s, 80s, and 90s. ShopRetroactive.com.
It's the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show. Yeah, with Joe.
I actually saw you in Florida on Lollapalooza. I think it was 1992 ish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it was
saw you guys
92.
in maybe Orlando. Might have been Orlando.
Yeah, that was a good show. That was a fun show.
Yeah, that was one of your first big shows, right? Or were you on tour before
No,
that?
no, we were on tour before that. We had toured with the Peppers when I was in Pearl Jam before the Lollapalooza thing and in the States, and we were doing some. It started off like 5,000, and then as we blew up and they blew up and Smashing Pumpkins blew up, we were playing bigger shows. A few years at Cal Palace we did together with Nirvana, and then a couple other shows. Those were 25, 30,000, and then we did Pink Pop already at that point, which was 5,000. So yeah, we'd already kind of popped our proverbial large crowd cherry at that point. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well,
Lollapalooza was such a treat, man. What a great summer.
yeah, I remember that show. It was you guys and Soundgarden was there, I believe.
Yeah, and Ice Cube and
Yeah,
Jesus and Mary Chain and Lush and Ministry and Ice Cube was awesome. Man, it was just great. That was a great summer. Probably the one of the. I mean, everybody that I'm still in touch with. I mean, every time that comes up or there's a photo, every one of us, it's like a knee jerk reaction. Wow, that was great, you know. But for Pearl Jam, it was an incredible summer. I mean, we played for 30, 35 minutes at 2 in the afternoon because we signed on before stuff blew up. So, I mean, it was awesome. It was like go, give it all you got, and then you had the whole rest of the day to steal boats and go fishing and watch other bands and hang out.
yeah. Did you do a lot of documenting back then? Did you take a lot of photos and stuff?
I was blessed with um, parents that taught me at a young age to pay attention. That if stuff sucked, pay attention because you'll learn from it, and if stuff's fantastic, pay attention because you'll want to remember it. And so I still to this day, 9 times out of 10, if I hear a crowd noise, I know if the Pearl Jam crowd was back then or not. I remember every show, but and on that tour, um, before that tour had happened, we'd already sold a bunch of records, and we were in Sony's very good graces. So they were giving us full of shit, like uh, all of a sudden before Lollapalooza, they gave us all the state of the art, that they were back then, the high 8 tape, little handy cams, and I carried a camera around a lot, and so yeah, we were documenting a lot of shit.
That's
Sure.
fun. That's fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great.
Now,
It was awesome.
now let's go back a little bit. You had mentioned your parents. Were they pretty supportive of your decision to go into the music business?
Oh man. I mean, first of all, you got to understand you're talking about drummer's parents. They were supportive uh, before. I mean, they were supportive of me expressing myself with sticks, on a very loud instrument in my teenage and younger bedroom, and the band's practice there and everything. So they were incredibly, I don't know if supportive is the right word, patient and tolerant,
Yes.
the
Got to
first
be
and
patient.
foremost. And understanding and a little oblivious. And, there's a whole lot of stuff there. But in that it all, I guess, sums up to be that's that they were supportive. When I was a kid, um, I had informed them that that I wanted I this is what I wanted. I saw the band Triumph. Remember Triumph, the
Mm-hmm.
Canadian rock band?
Sure.
Um, I saw them at Union Arena, and one particular time, I'd already been bitten by the bug. I got to touch Angus Young's leg back in Black Tour, one of my first concerts I ever went to.
Got his leg.
And yeah, we walked around. I jumped over the rail onto the floor, and Brian Johnson was carrying around, and I touched his leg. And I saw Ted Nugent a bunch of times, and Van Halen, and I mean, incredible time music, that late '70s, early '80s time. Saw Journey and Foreigner and all these great bands. But at this one particular show of Triumph, Gilmore, the drummer, had his kick drum going on his football kit. Boom, boom, boom. And the lights came up, and there was 12,500 people all like fist in the air, And I was at about mid court at the arena, and I just looked around. I remember that voice in my head that was actually my voice saying, "Wow, I want that. That's what I want." So I let them know. I mean, I think they already knew because it's all I did. Between baseball and drumming, and I let them know that I felt like I could always go back. I'm getting old. Sorry. I could always go back to school and stuff. Excuse me, but I wanted to play drum. And the way I put it to him was that I could always reevaluate my life when I'm 25. This is a 12, 13-year-old kid talking. I could always reevaluate my life and go back to school and stuff, but I've got to give it a shot. And I remember calling on, it was right around the eve of my 25th birthday. I was one of the headliners in front of 2,500 people with all of my heroes: Terry Bozzio, Louis Bellson, Ginger Baker, all these guys, headlining the Modern Drummer Festival. And I called my folks up and I said, "Well, what now?"
Yeah. I think it did.
So in that, but I really, I didn't know what I was really getting into. Like none of my family or friends, nobody was in the industry or anything. I just had to play. That's all there was to it. It was the only time I felt connected to anything or even myself when I was grown.
Mm-hmm. Now, and the way you found yourself into Pearl Jam was, I thought, pretty interesting because Matt Chamberlain, you knew him, right? How did you guys know each other?
Well, Matt and I, we didn't really know each other at the time. We knew of each other. He was in a founding member of a really great band called Ten Hands, which I kidnapped a couple of members of Ten Hands in my Green Romance Orchestra project after Pearl Jam. But they were, to me, the most incredible local band in the Dallas area. Earl Harvin, another great drummer, Mike Dillon, and Matt Earl were just incredible. And Gary Muller played the Chapman stick, which was new on the scene and played it so well. It was just such an intense, rhythmic, uh, entertaining, and musical band. And Matt got taken out of that band and went on tour with Edie Brickell and Bohemian. And so when Matt split to go off with Edie, he was doing a lot of sessions with a producer called named David Castell. And so all of a sudden there was a void, and Dave started calling me. So it was kind of like I was following where Matt left his footprints. I was kind of stepping in his place, and um, he was on tour with Pearl Jam. They just hired him. Dave Cruzen and the band parted ways, and they hired Matt. They had this this showcase kind of a tour thing going on. And Matt, while they were in New York, got asked to join the G. Smith band for Saturday Night Live, and that was more aligned with what he wanted to do with his career. And so he was back in Dallas, and he was with Mike Dillon, um, and they were at a bar, main bar, and my band, the band I was in, Dr. Tongue, we were playing that night, and they just happened to come in, and Matt was like, he's kind of in the spot. He's like, he was talking to Mike about leaving Pearl Jam gig. He didn't want to leave them hanging, so they're kind of like, who could I recommend? Blah, blah, blah. And Mike pointed out, well, what about Dave? Because we have playing, and so it's a funny story because that night on the way home, my snare drum bounced out of the back of my Ranchero. I stopped at a stoplight. My snare drum was going past. I was like, fuck. And at that point, I had been playing since I was a little kid, and I just felt like I kind of felt like I played it out. I didn't know where else to go. I mean, the guys I was playing with, to me, were at the top of the game, and they were the guys I wanted to play with. But again, we didn't have any, you know, um, Illuminati connections or parents in the industry or anything. So I remember getting home and I had made my $50 from the gig, and I knew it was going to cost me more than that to replace the two cymbals I broke trying to impress Mike and Matt. And my snare drum just rolled across the fucking hot. I was just like, man. And it was the first time in my life that I had, um, instead of setting my drums up in my little one car sand floor garage where we rehearsed, I stacked them up in the corner of the living room. I sat there and I sat that night. And maybe I'm this is I just couldn't see any way to break through to the next level, and I just kind of thought, yeah, maybe it's time. And the next day, the phone bill was due, and it was like I was like $4 short, and I had sold my bicycle. I was still $4 short. A friend of mine bought my last joint for $3, and I found the rest of it in the couch cushions. And I walked the place and I paid my phone bill. And when I was walking back home, when I got to the front yard, starting up the sidewalk, step, I heard the phone ring. Hey, the phone's on. And I went in and I picked it up, and it was Matt. Hey, man, you want to check out the band program? But it was that close to like, I mean, for the first time, I decided, eh. And then, again, all those chains of events the next morning of paying my phone bill. And then, as soon as if anything would have been different, I would have called. But Matt had called Dave Castell and got my number, and then called and asked me if I'd be interested in checking the band out.
Wow. So you were this close to hanging it up.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. But, that might not have lasted, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, it should, but everything your trajectory could have been totally different.
Yeah, if I wouldn't have sold that juvie, or if I would have smoked it instead of going to pay the phone bill, whatever it was. It's amazing how things work, and and it I remember that feeling of like, when I hung up the phone and I thought, first I thought, the fuck is Pearl Jam?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Mother Love, what? I don't know anything about that.
Because you're in Texas and they're
And
in Seattle, right?
well, yeah, and it just wasn't my kind of thing. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the kind of music I listened to. Um, I remember when Soundgarden had come through Dallas, but I just thought they had a cool name. I never heard it. You know what I mean? It was just I was more into local music and Zappa and Parliament, and I was getting all these. all these guys, Doug Neal and Robert Cooper and you know Joey Ellis and Brian Ty, all these people, and my friend John Anderson, they were all turning me on to all this new music. Um, and it just, yeah, I was way off the old for
So,
what
so
I was appreciating.
how, okay, after you got that phone call, how soon did you head out to Seattle?
Oh man, um,
I mean, was it fairly
it
quickly or?
was fairly quickly. Yeah, they were in a
Yeah,
rush for sure. I mean, they were checking out, auditioning different people and all that.
yeah.
Uh, Pat Mastelotto played with them for a minute, a bunch of different people. But yeah, I went up a few weeks later, and at that point, I wasn't really that thanked. I wasn't really that into it. I wasn't really. I wasn't very even really excited about it. I tried to make it through the 10 record when I was listening to the demo or the cassette they sent me to learn the songs. And at one point, I actually called and uh, and asked Eddie and Jeff if they wanted to learn, to come up and play the songs as they were on this cassette. And if they would have said yes, I would have said no, I wasn't.
Really? You didn't like it
Yeah,
that much?
I mean, it took me. I mean, it was. I don't even. Yeah, it was years. I was in the band for years before I actually listened to a full song off. Yeah,
So,
I just.
so when you got there, you guys just started jamming and you just did your own thing to those
Yeah,
songs?
they said just come up and let's just jam. Okay,
Hmm.
so we went up. I went up and I was playing on Mac's kit, and that's when they introduced me to the drum. Because he had left the drum set up there, and we just we played and hung out and didn't really mess with the songs. Like every once in a while we played one, but yeah, then it was on a. I was supposed to go back home on Saturday, and on Thursday we were leaving the rehearsal room, and I asked Eddie. I said, "So, when I leave here, am I gonna know I've got the gig or?" And he said, "Well, I think we're gonna check out a couple other people." And I went back to the room I was staying in, and I thought, that doesn't sit well with me. So when I woke up the next day, I had called the management office, um, and I was going to tell Kelly that that I was going to split, because it was to me it wasn't worth hanging around another 2 days. Um, if they were auditioning other people, I didn't want the gig because the other people weren't. So I called the office and he answered the phone. He said, "Hold on a second." And then he got back on the phone and said, "How soon can you be back with the phone?" So again, like that close, you know. And so I went back, and a week later I was on my way to Seattle with a 24-foot truck with the drum set in the back of
Oh man. So
it.
when you made that move up there, um, the Seattle scene at that time was a pretty close knit scene, wasn't it? Were all those
Yeah, it was
bands pretty
awesome.
close? I mean, because you're coming from out of town jumping into that. I mean,
Well,
how did that
like
go over?
the first day I arrived in Seattle for the audition, um, I mean, the office uh, of Pearl Jam management, and like on one end of the office, 207 and a half Durst Street, it's like go up a 3-story walk up, and on one end was Kelly Curtis. On the other end was Susan Silver. Susan managed Soundgarden. Kelly managed Pearl Jam, and both managed Alice in Chains together. Also on the floor were Screaming Trees management, and all these various Seattle bands. They were all in that same room, one big open room with a couple offices at the Gen. And I mean, yeah, it was amazing. Like my first day arriving, I'm going up the stairs. I had gotten off the plane, I was about an hour early for the meeting, and so I putzed about in Pioneer Square. And then when I was going up the stairs, this really, just as like a sprightly, cute girl was coming down, and halfway down, our paths crossed, and she just punched me in the stomach.
Just out of nowhere. Bow.
Yeah, and it was Demery. It was Lane Staley's girlfriend, and yeah, she socked me in the stomach and then laughed her ass off, and it was just like, wow, welcome to Seattle. And
You weren't laughing.
oh yeah, I was. It was so unexpected, and the sound that I made cracked me up. Oh, But
That's funny.
yeah, it was close knit, and it was a trip. I mean, we when we left on our tour, I mean, everybody else, Alice was heading out with Van Halen, and Soundgarden was going out. I mean, everybody was going at the same time. So the office was just crazy. Everybody coming and going and getting. So, it was a trip. It was such a fast paced thing that it's almost like we all didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. We were just jumping in with both feet and going. And then, it was always great. Like, the next time I saw like Sean Kinney and those guys from Alice, we were in New Orleans. And it was just, it's just like we would run into each other on the road, and it was always awesome. And like we had made it a point a few times, shows with Soundgarden out, and then of course we did the whole Lollapalooza thing, and so it was cool. Yeah, it was a close knit community. But you know, even if I would have been there for years, it would have been the same because even though it was close knit, it was very kind of inverted group. And no one was very extroverted. No one was kind of, you know.
Yeah.
I
And
think I always like
nobody
to get
was
there.
big at this time, right? This was before anybody broke. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause I
I
saw
mean, Soundgarden were the elder statesmen.
well, I saw Alice in Chains with Van Halen on that tour. And
That's cool, huh?
it's cool. But at the time, nobody really knew who they were, and they were getting booze. Did you guys run into that same kind of situation too, or were you accepted right away, pretty much?
um, we fought for it hard. I mean, that's the only reason I get kind of like, what the fuck about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, and the fact that supposedly they think I was inducted to that. It was, yeah, the fact that when we went out, I mean, we went out with, $250,000 worth of debt to try to pay off, and no promise of anything. No promise of success. And it was like, the record label wanted us to go out with Ozzy Osbourne because he was also on Epic.
Oh
We
man,
said no to that.
that's probably a good
We said
choice.
no to that. Yeah, because this didn't make any sense to us. And 14 of us in a 15 passenger van, and the Chili Peppers asked us to jump in front of them for 30 minutes a night for $500 a show. And I mean, we borrowed money from our manager's brother because since we said no to Ozzy, the record company, they weren't giving us any support at all. The first record came out under a developmental deal anyway, like a handshake. So, when our first tour, I mean, there were nights we played, 500 seat place, and there was, playing 250 past club, and there was 150, and but from the moment we first played together, and it was unspoken, we just busted ass. And every town that we played, every show that we played, it was literally that, it would be like, who are they? And then whoop, there'd be these little pow. and and it was really amazing because you could actually physically see things changing. You know, when we first went to Europe, our first show in London was at, Esplanade, which was, two or 500 capacity place, but there was a line around the building. That could affect that and age it. But yeah, you know, we were in Victoria, Canada, and I remember Jeff saying, you know, that we really the record was just about to come out, or it had just come out like before, and it was like, man, we got to sell at least 20,000. We're not going to get a chance of it. I mean, that's where we were at. And we just played our asses off. And when we got with the Chili Peppers, and again, he wouldn't touch the video, nothing was happening, and we just worked our asses off. And it just got to where, I mean, you could slowly see it happening. And then the day that our T-shirts outsold the Chili Peppers T-shirts in merchandise, that's like, okay, it's going well.
Something was happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, radio wasn't touching the music, and MTV wasn't. And then the album sales were following us around. Every show we did, the next day, record company was getting orders for the record, and before you knew it, MTV didn't have a choice but to play, and radio didn't have a choice but to play because we had broken that threshold where they had to pay. Pretty amazing, considering we did we had two videos. One of them was a live recording, black and white. Second video for that was another live show, and that just MTV wasn't doing that at the time at all.
Yeah.
At all.
That's interesting to hear that story, because I have a lot of people from the rock scene prior to you, from the 80s, early 90s. I have a lot of those guys on this show, and they hearing their story of when you guys came onto the scene. It's interesting to hear your story from your point, how you guys took over that scene.
Yeah, well, it took us a long time, and it was a lot of work. And it was a trip because we were playing, 3 shows day off, 5 shows day off, 7 shows day off for almost 2 years. And so we didn't, and at the same time, we'd sold a couple million albums. We were still only paying ourselves $400 a month. So we didn't really feel like we were taking over anything. We were just working. We were just working.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. So once you guys did get that success, I mean, how did that affect you personally? Did it change
got me
you?
fired from the band.
Well, a couple years later. We're not there yet, Dave.
No, it didn't change much. I mean, again, we were just working really hard, and my girlfriend Sherry, at the time she worked for the band, and I got this little modest house and a used car, and I was able to pay off some friends' bills and shit like that, but it didn't really. I think the only thing it changed was, like, if I wanted to get a tattoo on my face, I could. I didn't feel like I was going to have to work days out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. How about the other guys? Did it affect them?
Yeah. That was it was, yeah, very much so. It was an interesting thing, and it's an interesting thing to see and to feel. I mean, it's like when you're working so hard towards something, group of people, and you're struggling together. You're a tribe. You're working towards the same thing, and all of a sudden, there was the ability for people to live where they wanted to live, how they wanted to live, and do what they wanted to do as individuals. And the first thing I noticed was that, I mean, the band, we were such different individuals, But when we were behind our instruments and together, such an easy and unified thing. Music came easy. The work wasn't work, even though we were all killing ourselves. We were working so well as a unit that it supported that. It was like everything that I put in, every time I broke a finger or whatever, it was like it was worth it, like for what I was motivated by or what I wanted to do, and how I felt about things, like all the sacrifices were worth it, all the rewards deserved. So, um, but then there came a time. I mean, I remember doing an interview with Eddie where during the interview I was like, it was so drastic from uh, there was just so many different dynamics and it was so drastic. And I remember afterwards, you know, I was like, what the fuck was that? His response was, I was just fucking. But it was really just, it was like we all had to develop our shell, I guess, our way of protecting ourselves from whatever it was. Everyone was always asking us at the time, like, how are you dealing with pressure? How do you find the pressure? And it was like, me, I didn't put pressure. I put more pressure on myself than I would allow anyone else to put, you know? So I actually felt like the pressure, this ain't shit compared to the pressure I felt like I was under. I was trying to feed myself, you know? Like, no, I spent my whole life, developing muscles, and the ability to do what I do. And I worked so hard to get to a point where I could just say, wow, this is what I do, and I can have a healthy and happy life and do things for people I care about, take care of myself because of what I've always wanted to do. So to me, the pressure had already happened, but it's different for different people, and persona is something of, to me, I didn't really feel like I didn't have walls around my house, and people would come up and take pictures in the windows. We put up the stuff that made it to where if you took a picture in the window of my house, it just reflected the camera back to you. It was like, but I didn't put up walls. When people would come up and be standing in the street, I'd invite them up and cook them fucking salmon. You know what I mean? It was like, to me, it was not a trip, but other people in the band, um, they had their own thing, and persona isn't enough to defend yourself. It's just, yeah. I'm trying not to say anything too mean about anything, but what it comes down to is people. Um, there was a point where Eddie had to be Eddie, and everyone else, had to let him.
Mm-hmm. Is that
And,
what
and
is that when you first noticed that your relationship with him was you guys are starting to separate?
I always respected Eddie as a singer, excuse me, and
Mm-hmm.
as a performer, all that stuff. I mean, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I never really, felt like he was all that genuine, and I, it's like we could connect when it was the two of us, but when anyone was around, I felt like again, and so um, when it did finally come down to where, again, excuse me, that came out, it was like I was the only one that didn't roll my eyes at some of the bullshit. I said, why, or all that stuff. And so it was just kind of one of those things. But yeah, it was just, I never expected that anyone would mess with what we had going as far as internally, and I certainly never thought that band was cowardly enough to not stand up and try to keep the band from becoming, Eddie.
Yeah, yeah. Well, going into recording verses, that was your first
Yeah.
time with, well, not the first time in the studio because you recorded a few
No.
songs with them before, but the first
Well,
album
plus,
with them.
I'd done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, it was, I mean, we spent, we got off the road and we spent a few months kind of woodshedding, which was me and Stone showing up early and him playing riffs and me playing along, and then the guys coming in and us just jamming, meandering it. And the way we did the versus record, we left it open. We didn't really finish songs. We got great ideas, and we were determined that then when we got to the studio, we would finish them then to keep it fresh.
That can be
So,
expensive.
no,
No.
nah. No, we wake up at 10:30 in the morning. We'd start recording. A lot of that record in my headphones, click track. And when I felt like I played the song well, I'd lean over to my bike and say, that was the song. And guys, by dinner time, they had overdone it. So no, it was pretty quick. I mean, even Eddie worked really quick lyrically. That was the slowest part of the record, but still, I mean, a lot of bands, the drum tracks are done, and months later, they're still working on lyrics. But no, we were in the studio for a couple of months, and the record was done.
Didn't you
Yeah.
guys switch studios for that record? Did you move?
No, we went from Galleria Potato Head, which was our little 7-foot ceiling rehearsal space in the basement of an art gallery in Seattle. We went from there to Nicasio, San Rafael, or north of San Rafael, site. The Vitalogy record did kind of.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought in the during verses, isn't that where you went and you like loved it? It was like paradise, and then Eddie did not like it.
Well, and that was the thing about Eddie's trip where somebody had asked me what I thought about. I think it was Cameron Crowe asked me what I thought about. Like, look at this place, it's incredible. It's beautiful, and um, you know, I didn't know we were supposed to be upset about that, but yeah, I mean, it was Northern California, springtime, incredible. And I don't think Eddie, it's just like everything else back then. Um, you've been cover of a magazine that you have to cover a magazine, the way it was. So, but yeah, no, it was a beautiful place. But definitely the polarization of Eddie and I started at that point, and it was kind of nurtured. You could see it, like, everyone else was just doing what they did. And on one hand, someone would say, "What do you think?" And it's like, "Fuck, this is great." Of course, Eddie was like, "Oh, how can you write a rock record?" And the place like, "Well, we sure did." Not to mention the 10 record was done at Ridge Farm, which uh, talk about over the top, incredible place. I mean, but no one asked Eddie in an article what he thought about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think Versus was your best record. I think you brought another edge to the band with your playing. And I think that
Yeah.
continued on to Vitalogy. And then soon as you were out of the band, in my opinion, I think they lost that edge again.
Mm-hmm.
Although 10 is a great record, it just didn't have that energy that you added to it.
No, 10 was a great record. And Jim Palmer is amazing. I'll say that. The guy who picked 10 record. They spent a few months at Beach Farm. Um, Jim is an incredible guy, incredible producer and engineer. And, I mean, he worked on some of the most influential and awesome he doesn't get enough credit for what he did on the 10 record. But the Vitalogy record, in my opinion, the cassette that I had before I got kicked out of the band, that record was, to me, the best program record ever.
Vitalogy.
Yeah, the
Mm.
version I had,
Oh.
the way it sounded, it had the same kind of qualities of verses, but it was way more honest sounding and soulful. But you know, it was a record that would have made Pearl Jam paper. And I was fired, and um, from what I understand, Eddie was given free reign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when they let you go, I mean, how did that all go down? I mean, you had to be as shocked as could
Yeah,
be, right?
I was shocked as shit. Yeah, well, we had talked about doing maybe, I had mentioned that maybe a little more, a little less guitar oriented on the next, record and blah blah blah, all this stuff. And we did our last show and for the Versus tour in New York, Paramount. And I remember after the show, I mean that tour to me, those shows, that band was incredible. And after the show, I went, saying goodbye to everybody because I was taking off. And I went and found Eddie. He was talking to Ace Frehley, and I waited patiently, for my bandmate to look over at me and so I could say see you in Seattle. And it took so long that Ace Frehley eventually looked over at me like, "What's this guy standing here for?" It was like that. And so I said, "Eddie, I'll see you. Good show, good tour. I'll see you in Seattle." And he didn't say a word. He just looked at me because he knew already that I was gone. He knew before that show. He knew the whole time. And I'll never forget that. It was like showed me a lot about it, that he could be like that. And so, when I got back, it was already kind of an uneasy feeling, but um, it's not something that I ever would consider happening. I spoke to my manager, and Eddie and him were on their way to the airport to go down to New Orleans to take care of that thing where Eddie had got some sort of scuffle with somebody. Um, and, Eddie was in the car with Kelly, the manager, and it's like, okay, well, blah, 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 blah. And then as I was hanging up, Kelly was like, oh, wait, wait, wait. And I put the phone back to my said, give Stone a call. We wanted to talk to you. And I said, okay. I called Stone. We decided to eat breakfast the next day. And I thought we were discussing, what we were going to do next. And he came in, he sat down. I was already, Dave Abbruzzese, we're looking for another drummer. That was it.
Just like that.
Just like that. But at least he had the fucking balls to be mad about it. So from what I found out later, Eddie's suggestion was just have the lawyers do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, that happens a lot that way.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's not. I wouldn't have thought it. I always respect Stone for doing that because I know. I mean, the experience we had together after he said that
Mm-hmm.
was pretty emotional thing.
Sure, sure. So
And
at this point now, I mean, what's going through your head? Did you have plans? I mean, it probably took you a little bit to come up with what you were going to do, right? I mean, what was going through your head at that
um,
time?
it was just way too much. It
Yeah.
was just like what the fuck. I mean, I called. First thing I did was called my girlfriend at the time, Sherry, and I was like, "How they fucking fired?" She was like, "What?" And then I called my best friend, of many many years, and told him. And his first response, I said, "No, I just got fired. Man, I never fired anything." And his response, without missing a beat, he said, "Good. You never fucking quit that fucking band anyway." And I was just like, "Whoa." It took me a long time to understand that right. That that I did feel underappreciated. I did feel um, like like there was a dynamic that was wrong element of the band in that, like I was the only one that celebrated our success. I was the only one that, like, when the record went gold, my reaction was, "Holy shit, this is awesome!" And I ended up, I ended up on a payphone with the crew back at the hotel saying, "Hey," and all of us were celebrating while the rest of the guys were sitting at a table quietly eating their food. And
Bummed
I
out.
just thought, wow, we paid off our debt. Yeah, it was like, why can't you celebrate what we've worked so hard for? I mean, I remember when Kelly mentioned, our manager mentioned, "Oh, by the way, our album went gold." That's how it was while we were eating together. And at the moment he said that, I was still making sure that one of my fingers was the knuckle still in place. I was like, ow, because I just trying to bend it. We had another show, for fuck's sake. And he said that, and I just remember my instantly my voice in my head said, "It's worth it." And I looked up from my hand, and no one else was smiling. And that's what my friend meant. I was like, "Look, you don't feel like it's like you feel like you earned what you got, and everyone else seems like they're entitled. You're proud of the work that you did, and everyone else, seems like doesn't matter. It's just like one of those things where, and that was the trip. And when I got fired, it was just like, ugh. But it was so intense um, at that point, and I didn't. It was like, I mean, everything was new. Money was new. Everything was different. And the last time I sat down and was just me by myself, not, when I was Dave Abbruzzese, Dave Pearl Jam, was when I went to Seattle. I became Dave New Guys, Dave Pearl Jam, and here I was back, and I was sitting there going, "What the fuck?" And I was right back to that same place that I was before. Like, do I really want to do this anymore? And luckily enough, uh, I went down to Texas with Dave Castell, that producer who gave me Pat my number. Went into his studio, scooped up Gary Muller, or scooped up Paul Slavens, the singer for Ten Hands, Matt Chamberlain's band that I was talking about before, Edie, and Daryl Phillips from Dr. Tongue, and Doug Neal, and all these people that I admired so much. And I drug them all into a studio, and we just started recording. Like, wow, this is fantastic. And so I basically said, I had the wherewithal to say, what would it take for each of you to give me a year of your life? And we found this ranch on 600 acres, and turned it into a studio. And all these guys took a year off from what they were doing, and we just, like a bunch of kids with the most elaborate toys in the world, got together and did music. Awesome. So, and as Paul Slavin put it saved me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when that news, the word got out that you were no longer in the band, did you get other offers from bands? Did people call you wanting you?
Yeah. The first thing, yeah, many, and still to this day. But music was so personal and so much of my identity with myself at the time based around music, and to be fired like that, it shook the core of me. I was 20s, and but I'd never really had to grow up. I didn't. I left school way early. My social scene was basically, behind my kid. So, um, yeah, it was like all of a sudden I was, an adult in an adult environment, but still I was a kid. And so it was tough. There was a lot of anxiety, and there was just a lot of emotions that I had no fucking clue what they were, or what, how to deal with them. And I became afraid of putting myself in a vulnerable position. And the first call, like Abe Laboriel Jr., drummer for Paul McCartney now, his father, running the bass player, got in touch with me 2 weeks after I got fired. And he usually tours with Steve Gadd and all these, like my heroes again. And he said, Dave, come on, let's go to Europe. Come on, we'll just throw a kid on your back and we'll travel by train and we'll do some improv shows. And it was like, that's a legend asking me to take the seat of a legend. And I couldn't do it. I didn't have the heart, and I got a lot of different things that came up, but I was in that same place where I guess I was afraid, really literally was. I was just fearful of everything just seemed too much at that time. And it took me many years to kind of like settle into to figuring out who I was. I was about to grow up, and in that time also, I my attorney was also a Guns N' Roses attorney. She had told me that Axl wanted to talk about me joining Guns and all this stuff, and so that came about. Axl and I spoke a whole bunch, and and that we worked towards that, play a little bit and all that stuff. But again, that it was weird when I started doing that. The important thing to me was, that literally Kelly Curtis, program manager, and I was heartbroken. I didn't look at anything like business. I didn't see business as business. Everything was relationship between people, and I was shocked that he was able to, and the band were able to kind of cast me to the side and then treat me so fucking badly to protect their business. Um, still to this day, when I see the quote that Jeff Heyman said that I was more comfortable with rock star than blah blah blah, and that's why I was like that. I still, it's like, fuck, this is the most ridiculous fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. So, but that sort of stuff, and so when I was talking to Guns N' Roses management about, you know, connecting and doing all this stuff, I was honest about, Big Machine. It's like I've already been chewed up and spit out, and I'm not really in the guy again. But at one point, when we were working on music, I was Doug, management for GNR, said, what do you think? And I was, well, I think maybe this music, it's not really Guns N' Roses. Maybe Axl should do his own thing. It was like the idea was me and Podboy from Nine Inch Nails on drums, double drummer, more electric. Robin Faint from Nine Inch Nails on guitar, which was incredible. Duff was still there at the time. Dizzy was still there at the time. And Axl was actually there at the time at rehearsals, and it was like,
that's nice.
It was an amazing thing. Yeah, and I really like that guy, like him a lot. But it got to a point where it wasn't making sense. That it was, it was like the ideas that were being thrown around musically, and then playing a Guns N' Roses song was like, wow, this is two different things. And so I'd mentioned that, and management said, well, here's the deal, just go along with it. We're, basically the idea was let Axl do his thing without Flash, and when it doesn't succeed, then maybe that'll be his motivation, get Slash back, and that'll be your in because he doesn't want Matt back. And I was like, what the fuck? I mean, that went against. It was like the opposite of what I wanted part of, and it put me in this really terrible position. So I'd gotten to know Axl in such a way where I had a lot of respect for what he was wanting to do, and I also understood the amount of courage it took for him not only to want to do it after what he had been through, but for him to be so dedicated to just to be willing to be Axl Rose, again. He's a fucking tough motherfucker, but he's sensitive. Fucking, he's a real dude, and but to hear that when management said that to me, it put me in this position of like, I can't be honest, you know. He and I were in my car, we were in this rental car that I had, and I was driving around in LA with him, and I wanted to tell him so bad. I wanted to say, look, man, you're being fucked. This is how they're playing you, and because this guy, you know, it's like I play music with my friends. I'm not a guy. I'm not a drummer in a fucking, like that. It doesn't work that way. And so all of a sudden, I realized about myself that, wow, I'm not, music isn't a business. But this guy, I've got a choice to make right now. Either I can embrace this incredible contract that they're willing to give me, and all this money and all this shit, and all, you know, Axl was giving me a lot of power and decisions. As a businessman, I would have, uh, you know, because business is shitty, I would have said, yeah, great, fuck it, whatever, it matters. Business decisions, like versus, you know, buying another house and having a future that's set and all this stuff. Sure, business wise, fuck them, I got all this stuff. But this was my fucking friend who we were about to go to war together against the world. He wanted Guns N' Roses bigger before. And it's like, man, we're not going to do that unless we're like this. And so it was like, I had to quit. I had to tell, and I couldn't tell him why because I didn't want to shake his foundation either.
Sure, he asked, right?
No, I didn't give him the chance to ask. I wrote him a letter. I told him, no, I said it in a way that didn't give him the chance. I told him I wanted to be a musician first, rock first. And I did that on purpose because I knew that that his reaction was fury. That his reaction was saying that infuriating, and it was. He I got a call from my friend Kim at Rolling Stone, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" I just got off the phone with Axl. And I was like, "Oh, how is he?" And
how's he doing?
And then my phone rang, and no shit, I put it down on the table, and Sherry and I sat on the couch, and Axl went off on a stream of consciousness rant of like my own personal non-music fucking angry Axl Guns N' Roses show. He was letting me have it, and that was that. But yeah, it was heartbreaking really, because I had um, begun to develop a relationship where I felt like he trusted me and I trusted him, and that was, I mean, we spent many months cultivating relationships even before we played together because that trust was so important to him. And even when we decided that it was going to work after we got together and jammed, he wanted paper between us before we started working on music, because his trust had been violated before. And so yeah, it really, that's when I kind of went, nah, Big Machine and the whole business of rock and roll and music. I just went,
sure, it's understandable with what you've been through.
Yeah, and it's yucky, but it's interesting now. I'm 55 years old, and I feel like, as far as my playing, better than ever. As far as my headspace and how I feel about myself and relationships, people I meet, and relationships that I have, and all that stuff. I feel more prepared now to do what I did in my 20s than ever. So we'll see how the body holds up, but I feel like in the next year or two, I'll definitely take steps towards getting out and making a bunch of action.
Right. Oh, he froze up. Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Axl afterwards?
No, no, I've never, and it's only in the last 6 months that I've actually let the truth of that situation go.
Mm, okay.
I haven't spoken about it at all many, many years. Um, but, it's like I've always wanted to, now that I see Guns out and doing their thing, and I saw a video of them performing, and there was just a look in his eye and just his demeanor that I felt like at this point, his life won't be damaging, say what I had to say,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and and fuck, I mean, who am I? It's like it's a business, and it was a business decision that had millions and millions and millions of dollars behind it for that manager and that record label to do what they did, and lo and behold, it worked. It
Mm-hmm.
worked the way they wanted it to. And I saw Axl performing, and I just thought, you know what? Yeah, it won't. At this point, hopefully, if he ever hears it, um, maybe it'll just be one little piece of his heart that they will get back. I can't imagine I take up a whole lot of space, but at the same time, um, I really did and do care about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's time. I felt like it's enough time has passed that the truth be told, that won't hurt anybody.
Sure. Sure. Now, before we froze up, you did say in the next couple of years or so you would get back out there. That's where we were at when
Yeah,
you froze.
yeah. I feel like I have something to offer, and even more importantly, I feel like it's time. There's some other things that will come out in time. About things that have happened in my life and all this stuff. But right now, it's safe to say that if the universe is willing, I'll put
Mm-hmm.
shit out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to see you back out there. I watch your YouTube channel with you recording your
Mm.
drum sessions and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So amazing.
yeah. It's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
I still love playing. As much as ever. And biggest thing is that my relationship to music is and always has been a direct mirror of my relationship with myself. And yeah, so,
Did I hear correctly, as far as other artists go, that Joe Satriani gave you a call at one point and you kind of told him to go pack
I
sand or
fucked
something?
up. No, I fucked up, man. Yeah, he had called me, and I'll be honest here. I'll be honest. He had called me, and at the time I was doing way too much flow, and so I had just an air of myself that was like I remember the phone call, and I looked back at it with embarrassment as well as a chuckle. Um, but here I'm talking to Joe Satriani on the phone, and he's wanting me to come in and excuse me work on his next record with him. And he had worked with Jonathan Hoover by back then. Actually, side note, Jonathan Hoover was the one who went down the hill at the site and got the snare drum. I threw up the hill after recording Ruby. But I was telling Joe, like, yeah, your last records were so mechanical sounding. Maybe we got to do something raw and just go in there and the fucking mind.
What did he say?
Not much.
He wasn't expecting that answer, right? That reaction.
No, but really, what it was, as well as the drugs, was all just a part of the reacting to that fear that I spoke of earlier. I was looking for a way to justify the fact that I wasn't mature, that I wasn't able to deal with it or find a way to understand kind of what I'd done. So, trip. I dumbed myself for a while, and then I went the other way and worked with incredible guy Martin Bullard for a couple of years on understanding what I was, what I've been through. Yeah, it was awesome. But before that, yeah, I was trying everything just so normal, So yeah, crazy.
Well, I'm glad to see you're still playing drums because I know you do some stuff here and there, right? One-off stuff for people, and you still doing
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
thing?
Oh yeah, always in session, doing tons of sessions and working on my own music, um, which I just do for my head. Um, yeah, the, the best way myself.
Let me ask you this. I know you've addressed this issue before, but with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, how that went down. I know you've talked about that, but
Yeah.
since that time has passed, have you gotten past that kind of, or is that still something?
I never, it's interesting. A lot of people, when they read the words that I've written on social media, they put a bitterness to them that I don't have.
Okay.
And I've tried hard. Again, I quit school when I was 14 years old, but I've managed to somehow be able to express myself. I feel like it's the point across. But social media, it's a weird thing. People use voice in their head. Voice sound. People that don't know me, they assume that I'm bitter or upset. So instantly, it's that attitude with the words that I write about that. My whole thing with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was it's just we
It's
worked
what?
so hard that it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
That we worked so hard as a band, and literally, at the time the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happened, over 50% of what they were doing live, I wrote, and all of the success that they had was awards or accolades, albums, all that stuff that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So it was shocking, and Dave Cruzen, he's a great guy. I've gotten to know him really well, but had exchanges and communicate together. And I like the guy a lot. And um, you know, for the for them to say that that they only recognize people who made contributions to the band success is like, to me, it was such a slap in the face, and I was surprised that the band still didn't stand up together.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it said a lot to me about that I didn't and I don't know what it was that kept that from being point of contention. I mean, that band that I was fought for it, fought
Mm-hmm.
just right and won always.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really surprised, and I just can't help, along with many other like business lives, that um, yeah,
Yeah.
I just think it's wrong,
Yeah.
wrong
No,
thing.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean,
You
as far as I mean, it's still it is what it is.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and the world knows that you, out of all the drummers, you probably made the biggest contribution to that band.
Well, Stone Gossard said they'd have been just as successful with any other drummer.
I don't think so.
And
I
that,
think you brought something to
yeah,
them.
I don't either. And
Yeah.
that in itself is something that still, I think if there's anything that still hits you the wrong way, it's to think they might
Hmm. Yeah. Do you think you ever talk to those guys again?
um, I don't know. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But um, I don't know. It's funny. People ask me all the time if I've talked to any of them, and I haven't. I've talked to Matt and Dave Houston and Jack Irons, but I haven't spoken or heard from any band.
Yeah. Well, maybe
Yeah.
when you get back out there in a year or two, you'll cross
Yeah.
paths again, and
Well, it'd be
bygones be
amazing.
bygones.
I mean, I've always had the the high hope to perform some of those songs again, the audience
Mhm.
of the band. But I mean, it is what it is,
Yeah.
but it'd be fun.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to talk to you too about your free association records. Is that something you still got going?
um, it's it was just kind of a, you know, with the GRO guys, it was kind of the way I functioned. Like, when I had my commercial studio, I didn't charge people for it. It was just like, to me, it's a free ass record,
Mm,
what,
yeah.
what it's
Free ass
always been
records.
called. It was just basically, kind of a tongue in cheek thing about my accountant telling me when I was sending out the Green Romance Orchestra CDs, people would send me a check to the PO box, and I would, they'd send me there's so many of them had nice letters attached to them, and I would answer the letter on the check, put the check in with a couple of CDs, and mail it off. And my accountant at the time was like, "What are you doing?" It's like for every order you get, you send out 2 or 3 albums, and you send the check back. So I was like,
The
free ass
opposite of what you're
record.
supposed to do.
Yeah. So it became kind of a running joke, and I've never run it like a label or anything. It's just basically
Okay.
a moniker. Yeah, free ass record.
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, listen, it's been an honor to talk to you, Dave.
Well, it was a treat. I enjoyed it. I actually, when I went to sleep last night, I had worked a bunch. I've been doing a lot of mixing, and I got into this flow last night on this work, and when I looked up and the sun was coming, like, oh fuck. And so I went to sleep, or tried to, but I was like, every hour I was like looking at the alarm, like, oh shit, didn't want to be late or miss it. That's why I finally said, fuck it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I said, let's do it. And when I was in the shower, I was like, man, you know, hey, you can be sleepy and honest. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's like that. It made me feel really good about where I'm at in my life, that I don't have to be rested and on my game, because I live my life pretty straightforward and honest these days. So
Yeah.
it's a
You
nice
seem
feeling.
happy. You
Yeah,
seem happy.
I am. It's like, yeah, like I said, it's I've had my life has been, it reads really well, and the chapters are thick and way diverse. And at this point, um, the benefit of, like I said at the beginning, my folks teaching me to pay attention paid off. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
except for
Hey.
these goddamn. I got my motorcycle ride. I hit a fucking big hole in the road. My clack, and 2 teeth
Oh
came out.
no.
Yeah,
Oh.
so I've got that going for me. But I hate the dentist, but I figure I got to get it fixed, because it's just, it's the look that's not working for
Yeah. 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 Well,
me.
as we get older, we care less about those type of things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Wow, this cold is killing me. Ah, but I'll
But
get
yeah,
over it.
man, I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for the thoughtful questions and the patience to allow me to answer them.
Yes, sir.